G'day viewers. I received a call from an electrician who had a Star Delta starter and he was having a lot of trouble with nuisance tripping. He was saying it wouldn't get up and away sometimes, it had a little bit of load, it would be causing issues. And so I asked him where the thermal overload was sitting. Is it reading the line current or phase current? And if you saw my video on phase and line currents and voltage, you probably already see where I'm getting to with this. But he wasn't too sure what that meant, what it was about. So if you're having trouble with trip settings on Star Delta starters, it is important to understand where the thermal overload sits in the Star Delta starter. So for instance, if you've got your line contactor, and there you've got your delta, and you've got your star. Where is the delta fed from? If it is fed from above the line contactor, and so obviously your thermal overload's going to be down here, if it's fed from above there, then that there will be reading the phase current. If your delta is fed from below the thermal overload, then it'll be reading your line current. Okay, so what does that mean on the trip settings? Your line, if it's reading the line current, if it's coming from underneath the thermal overload, so it might be that if your line contactor is further up in the box maybe, but certainly if your delta is fed from underneath your thermal overload, then it's reading your line current, and that is to be set at 100%. So if it's a 100 amp motor, you set it to 100 amps. If it is fed from above the line contactor, well then it's reading the phase current, and so that's when you set it to 58%. So 58% of the full load. So that you'd set, if it's wired to the top of the line contactor, you set it to 58 amps. If it's fed underneath the overload, then you set it to 100%. So their issue was that it was actually fed from underneath the overload, and yet because everyone knows that you set your setting to 58% on a Star Delta starter, it was actually set to 58 amps instead of 100 and causing nuisance tripping. So, okay, hope it helps. See you tomorrow.